Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Accent Decelerator, the course where we're going to help you reduce and eliminate your accent. Today, we're going to be focusing on the ED rule. This is when words end with ED. There's 3 different rules that go along with this. By focusing on this, you'll be able to really reduce your accent because you'll know when to make each sound when words end in ED. When words end in ED, they can vary with different sounds. Alright, let's get going because we have a lot to cover today. I first want you to take a look at the chart I put onto your PDF for class 6. This is important because it shows you the different words that end in ED and the rules for it. Take a look as I look over here and read them off to you. So first, we have words that end in D or T. The ED ending will form a new syllable and sound like id, like permitted, wanted, needed, and submitted. Those are all different examples. Next up, we have words that end in a vowel of an unvoiced consonant. These are ED ending words that form a T sound. The example is laughed, walked, baked, and danced. See how it ends with a T sound? That's an ED word that ends with the T sound. And finally, we have words that end in a voiced consonant. The ED sound will form a D sound, as in the word loved, hoped, asked, and cooked. These all end with a D sound. Please remember that with the last 2 columns on this sheet, so the one that ends with the T sound and the one that ends with the D sound, they don't make a new syllable. Like permitted, that's another syllable, but loved isn't pronounced loved, it's just loved. So that stays 1 syllable. This is a very important rule to remember because it will help reduce your accent. I'm going to read this set of words out loud one more time just so you can really get an idea of how to pronounce them based on the specific word in the specific rule. Permitted, wanted, needed, submitted, laughed, walked, baked, and danced, loved, hoped, asked, and cooked. The number one thing that I see as an error from people are saying words like loved as loved. Make sure you pay attention to that. Don't pronounce a second syllable unless it's from the first column, where words end in the actual ED sound. Now I want you to pause the video, take a look at the chart one last time, and repeat these off on your own. Great work. Now I have a list of words. I want you to read these off on your own, and then when we come back, I'll read them off for you. All right. So let's get going with pronouncing these words. Let me read them. Called, traveled, worked, studied, missed, lived, invited, enjoyed. These are all variations of the ED sound. Take a look, make sure you're pronouncing them correctly, and now we're going to move on to the next section. Next, I'd like to put all of this into practice. I've written a paragraph for you. I want you to pause the video and read it out loud yourself. Go ahead and do that now. Great. Now I'm going to read this paragraph off to you. I want you to pay attention to how I pronounce the words that end in ED. It had rained for days and we wanted to go outside. We decided to go anyway and walked through the park. We actually really loved the rain and danced as we made our way home. I needed this because I had just submitted my college paper and felt burnt out. This walk was everything I wanted, and it helped me relax after having a stressful few days. Do you see how ED is placed all throughout this paragraph? There are ED rules of all 3 different kinds within this paragraph as well. Feel free to pause this video, rewind, and watch this again so you can hear me pronounce the different versions of ED. now we're going to go over these ED words put into specific phrases. Just small, short ones for now, because in a few classes we're going to be working on how these words sound combined with other words and how it can change the actual pronunciation of that word based on what word is before it and after it. If you take a look at your PDF, I've included these phrases and these words as well. I'm going to read them off from my computer here, and I want you to follow along as I pronounce them. Loved has the D sound. I loved her. Rained has the D sound. It rained hard. Next up is the ED sound pronounced as a T sound after unvoiced consonants. Walked with the T sound. I walked around. Danced with the T sound. She danced more. Helped with the T sound. I helped him. Finally, we pronounce the ED sounds as ID after D and T sounds. Needed is a new syllable sound. I needed this. Submitted, another new syllable sound. We submitted a new paper. Wanted is a new syllable sound. I wanted a friend. And decided is a new syllable sound. I decided to attend. Okay, so now that we have reviewed all of these rules one more time, I wanted to explain the functionality of these. How can you actually use this in your everyday life? The only way you're going to really learn how to use this properly is by practicing. Practice, 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 because that's how you're going to be able to perfect your English. By practicing, your accent will greatly be reduced, and you'll be able to communicate more clearly and confidently. Now, let me show you how to identify the proper ED sound in the ending of a word. There are 4 main steps for being able to identify what sound. I wanted to break this down for you so it's the easiest for you to understand so you can implement it in your everyday life. The first is to listen to the last sound of the verb. The second is if the last sound is a voiced consonant, the ED ending will be pronounced as D. The third is if the last sound is a voiceless consonant, the ED ending will be pronounced as T. And the final, fourth, is if the last sound is T or D, the ED ending will be pronounced as ID. Now, I want to practice this in real life, as in, let's go over some words, I'll explain the sound and explain why it sounds that way. Take a look at the chart included on your PDF. So as you can see on the left side of the column here, we have phrases. The middle column is the pronunciation and the right is the identification. The identification is essentially the description of what sound and why. Our first word is wanted. Wanted. This is the ID sound because the root word want ends in T. Wanted, wanted. It's also the new syllable sound. Wanted, wanted. Next one is rained, rained. That is the D sound because the root word ends in N. When the root word ends in N, it will be the D sound. Rained. Next we have stopped, stopped. This is the T sound because the root word of stop ends in P. Stopped. So the ending is a T sound instead of ED. It's not stopped, it's stopped. This is a very common mistake, specifically with people from South America. I've noticed it a lot when teaching them. They'll say, I walked or I stopped. It's I walked, I stopped. Next up, we have landed, which is the ID sound because the root word ends in D. Land, landed. Next up, we have played, which is the D sound because the root word ends in Y. Play. When the root word ends in Y, it will be the D sound at the end of the ED. Played, played. Next up, we have missed, missed. This is because the root word ends in S. Missed. The ending is a T sound. Next up, we have shouted. This is the D sound because the root word ends in T. Shout. This results in the D sound of ED. Shouted. Next up, we have opened. opened. It is the D sound because the root word ends in N. Open. When the root word is an N, it ends in the D sound of ED. Opened. Started. Started. This is the ID sound because the root word ends in T. It's also the new syllable. Started. 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 The next one, worked. Worked. This is the T sound because the root word ends in K. Worked. When the root word ends in K, the sound is going to be a T instead of ED. It's not worked, it's worked. Worked. Next up, we have expected. Expected. This is the D sound because the root word ends in T. Next up, followed. Followed. Again, the D sound because the root word ends in W. When the root word ends in W, the sound will be a D sound. Followed. Followed. Finished is the T sound because the root word is ending in SH. Finish. So finished. Finished. It's not finished. Finished. Next up, covered. Covered. The D sound because the root word is R. Cover. Cover. Covered. Finally, we have allowed. Allowed. Also the D sound because the root word ends in W. Allow. Allowed. It's not allowed, it's allowed. So now we've gone over a chart that explains basic words that you'll see in English that end in ED. Please keep in mind that this is not every word in the English language that ends in ED. Almost every word in the English language that is past tense will end in ED, so please keep that in mind. That's why these rules are so important to understand, because you're going to be seeing these every time, or almost every time, you speak in past tense or hear someone else speaking about past tense. Now, I wanted to go over the shape of your mouth when you're speaking. Let's work with two examples, wanted and needed. Let's start with wanted. I want you to say the word after I say it. Let's go. Wanted. Wanted. Now, let me explain to you how to pronounce the ending, id. What I do is I pull my tongue back. It's against the back of my teeth, but also touching the roof of my mouth, just the tip. Wanted. And it's flowing air through my mouth. It's almost like an open mouth between my teeth. Wanted. Wanted. And the tongue ends at the tip. It doesn't come back down. Wanted. It ends with your tongue at the roof of your mouth against your teeth slightly. There's not any hard pressure. It's quite open. Wanted. Wanted. So we just did wanted. Now let's do needed. 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 Just practice a couple times. I'll say it and then you say it. Needed. Needed. It's the same as the word wanted with the ending. Wanted. Needed. Okay, next one. Let's go over the T sound pronunciation at the end of the word with words that end in ED. Talked and walked. So I pronounce walked by taking the tip of my tongue at the end of the word and then removing it off. Walked. Walked. And when you remove it off the same area as the ED ending, so it's up against the roof of your mouth and the front of your teeth, it starts walked. You pull it down and at the same time breathe out. Walked. Walked. And it makes a s sound. Walked. Walked. Same with talked. You remove your tongue quickly from that ED placement of the other words, and you remove it down to make the T sound. Walked. And your mouth on the outside, so like your cheeks and your lips, are relatively relaxed. Walked. Walked. And finally, we have the D sound ending. Loved and hoped. So these ones end with the D sound. Loved. Loved. It's more in the back of your throat than anything. Loved. And it's a similar tongue action to the T sound, but you don't push out the air. So instead of talked, it's loved. Loved. It's lower in pitch, and it goes to the back of your throat instead with the sound. Loved. Instead of loved, it's loved. It's almost silent at the end. So that's how you pronounce the 3 different ED endings. This is extremely important for your pronunciation and to help reduce your accent. Great job! Now that we've reviewed all of the ED endings, I just wanted to give you 4 bonus tips on how to make learning these and solidifying these into your English language easier. The first one is to listen to people saying these words and identifying what ED pronunciation they're using. Just anytime you're out in public or listening to movies, TV shows, podcasts, pay attention to words that end in ED and try and consciously think to yourself, what ending is this and why are they pronouncing it this way? The next one is for you to say aloud all of these ED endings. Try it once a day. Write down 10 ED words, 1 on each sticky note. Put them all around your house and practice saying them with the correct ending. This will allow you to really put these into your everyday vocabulary. Next up, write them down. Maybe sit down every day and write down a list of 10 to 20 different words, just new ones every day that end in ED. Practicing writing them allows you to say it in your head as well. You can practice it in your head and then also say it out loud. And finally, you can play a YouTube video 10 minutes a day of people just speaking in English. Identify the ED ending and just really take it in and listen to it. By doing these 4 different things, you're really helping yourself grow and helping yourself reduce your accent to go more towards a neutral accent. That's it for today's lesson on the ED sounds. If you have any questions, as always, reach out to us on any of our platforms. It was great seeing you, and I'll see you in the next class. Have a great day!